Welcome to the joy of editing. Today we're going to rework a sequence set on Utapau, namely the duel between General Kenobi and General Grievous. This episode is going to be split into two parts. First, we're going to analyze the duel's role in Episode 3's narrative. Then we're going to shift gears to learn the sacred art of cutting on action. If you're interested in narrative design, you're going to love the first part. If you're interested in learning how to cut an action scene, you're going to love the second part. If you're interested in both, today's your lucky day. Now I'm going to warn you right now, this is going to get complicated, because Revenge of the Sith is the most convoluted of all of George's Star Wars films. But if you bear with me, the results are going to be worth it. The duel on Utapau takes place in Act 2 of Revenge of the Sith, so the first thing we need to do is figure out the duel's role in Act 2, as well as its role in the structure of the film as a whole. Like all of George's Star Wars films, Revenge of the Sith has a 4-act structure, but almost all of Episode 3's acts have a split focus. A split focus act has 2 or more separate plot lines that are intercut together. If you remember, in our first episode, we talked about how Empire Strikes Back and Attack of the Clones use split focus acts to their advantage. In Empire, we cut back and forth between Han and Leia running from the Empire and Luke training on Dagobah. In Attack of the Clones, we cut back and forth between the Detective Obi-Wan adventures and Anakin and Padme's trip to Tatooine. In short, some Star Wars films use split focus acts, and some, like Phantom Menace and A New Hope, use single-focus acts. After sitting down and untangling all of Revenge of the Sith storylines, I realized that 90% of the film's narrative problems, including the Utapau Duel, could be fixed if we just switched from using split-focus acts to single-focus acts. So let's do that real quick. The original flow of Episode 3 runs something like this. Act 1 focuses on the rescue of Chancellor Palpatine and ends with a happy landing. Act 2 splits its focus between the hunt for Grievous, which ends in Obi-Wan's uncivilized victory, and Anakin's turn to the dark side, which climaxes in Mace's failed attempt to arrest the Chancellor. Act 3 splits its focus between Order 66, which ends when Yoda and Obi-Wan discover Anakin as Darth Vader, and the Rise of the Empire, which climaxes in Palpatine's speech to the Senate. Act 4 splits its focus between Yoda's duel with the Emperor, which ends with the old frog tumbling into the guts of the Senate, and the Battle of the Heroes, which climaxes with the high ground winning every time. After that, we get 500 endings too many, and the credits roll. Okay, let's refocus. Act 1 is already good because it only focuses on rescuing the Chancellor. In Act 2, we'll keep the hunt for Grievous and cut Anakin's turn to the dark side. In Act 3, we'll keep Order 66 and cut the Rise of the Empire. And in Act 4, we'll keep the Battle of the Heroes and cut Yoda's duel with Palpatine. Mr. Editor, the entire point of Episode 3 is Anakin's turn to the dark side. You can't just cut all those scenes and replace them with the Utapau Duel. That won't make any sense. The main problem with Anakin's turn to the dark side is that it muddles up every act by taking center stage at all the wrong moments. The way to fix that is to weave bits of Anakin's dark turn into the 4 major acts: the Battle of Coruscant, the Battle of Utapau, Order 66, and the Battle of the Heroes. In short, we're not cutting the fact that Anakin turns to the dark side. We're just reframing the focus. Now that we've refocused our acts, the importance of the Utapau Duel becomes crystal clear. Episode 3 is now a film of 2 halves. The first half focuses on the end of the Clone Wars through the battles of Coruscant, Kashyyyk, and Utapau, and the second half now focuses on the conflict between the Jedi and the Sith through Order 66 and the Battle of the Heroes. Now, the duel on Utapau is not just the climax of Act 2, it's also the climax of the entire first half of the film. Mr. Editor, are you telling me you're going to cut this scene in Palpatine's office and the whole unlimited power sequence? Bro, there's no way the film will make any sense if you do that. We don't need this scene in Palpatine's office because it doesn't tell the audience anything they don't already know. Secondly, the idea that Anakin doesn't know that Palpatine's a Sith after the Plagueis conversation makes little Annie look really dumb. If we assume that Anakin knows that Palpatine's a Sith at least by the Plagueis conversation, then every other Anakin scene between the opera and Order 66 is improved because it leaves the audience guessing about what Anakin's going to do. Essentially, we're changing Revenge of the Sith from a tragicomic melodrama into a mystery thriller. The other sequence we really don't need is this comedy of errors in Palpatine's office, because every key piece of information given in that sequence is delivered more effectively elsewhere. Mr. Editor, let me get this straight. You're telling me that we find out what happened to Mace Windu, how Palpatine got scarred and deformed, that Anakin became Darth Vader, and what Palpatine's entire evil plan was somewhere else. Yep, Mace Windu is here.
The Jedi have tried to overthrow the Republic.
I can't believe that.
I saw Master Windu attempt to assassinate the Chancellor myself.
Palpatine's scars are here.
The attempt on my life has left me scarred and deformed.
The Darth Vader reveal is now here.
You have done well, my new apprentice. Now, Lord Vader.
And Obi-Wan explains the plot to Padme here.
Palpatine is the Sith Lord we've been looking for. After the death of Count Dooku, Anakin became his new apprentice.
Now we can finally get into the nuts and bolts of reworking the Utapau sequence. To make this as simple as I can, let me show you the scene switcheroo first, and then I'll recap Act 2 so you can see how the new flow makes sense of the whole sequence. Here's the original scene board. Obi-Wan lands on Utapau and discovers Grievous's army. Obi-Wan stops by Big Lizard Depot and rents a feisty one. Obi-Wan jumps into the middle of the droid army for no reason. The clones attack and Grievous makes a break for it. Mace Windu decides to arrest Palpatine. Anakin finds out Palpatine is a Sith and almost arrests Palpatine. Obi-Wan chases Grievous and blows him up. Mace sets off to arrest Palpatine for real this time. A bit confusing, right? We already know that we're going to cut the scene in Palpatine's office, but let's also cut the Big Lizard Depot, and then move the first Mace Windu scene in between Obi-Wan arriving on Utapau and the duel with Grievous. That way, the duel can lead directly into the chase scene without cutting away. If we add those changes to a bunch of other minor changes, the Utapau arc in Act 2 now runs something like this. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, Anakin and Obi-Wan returned to Coruscant after successfully rescuing the Chancellor from the vile clutches of General Grievous. Anakin is lauded by Bail Organa, but the Jedi warns the Senator that the war will continue until General Grievous is spare parts. We then cut to Utapau, where General Grievous is hiding with the Separatist High Command. Sidious tells the droid leader that the Clone Wars are coming to an end, because he will soon have a new apprentice. We then cut back to Coruscant, where Obi-Wan and the Jedi Council are worried about the end of the Clone Wars. They don't think Palpatine will give up his power when the war ends, so they tell Skywalker to spy on him. But Anakin isn't keen on spying, because his loyalties lie with the Chancellor. We then cut to Mace Windu questioning Anakin's loyalties, and then to Palpatine telling Anakin that clone intelligence has located Grievous on Utapau, to which Anakin replies, "At last, we'll be able to capture that monster and end this war." Palpatine then warns Anakin that the Jedi Council's loyalties do not lie with the Chancellor. We then cut to Anakin relaying the Grievous intelligence to the Council, and Obi-Wan is immediately dispatched to Utapau. After saying goodbye to Anakin, Obi-Wan plans the attack with Commander Cody and sets off for Utapau to confirm the intelligence for himself. We then cut to Anakin questioning where his loyalties lie with Padme, and then cut back to Obi-Wan arriving on Utapau and discovering that the clone intelligence is indeed correct. The Jedi dispatches R4 to tell Cody to begin the attack. We then cut to Commander Cody informing Mace Windu that they have begun their attack. Mace then sends Anakin to update Palpatine, and once the Chancellor's lackey is out of earshot, he decides his loyalties will no longer lie with the Chancellor as soon as Grievous is spare parts. We then cut back to Obi-Wan, who rolls up on General Grievous just as he is sending the Separatist High Command to Mustafar. Old Ben's gotta think fast, because if Grievous leaves before Cody's commandos arrive, his chance to capture that monster and end this war will be lost. Kenobi decides to gamble and taunts Grievous into a duel in order to stall long enough for the clones to arrive. His ploy works, and as the 212th rope in, Grievous realizes he's made a mistake and makes a run for it. Unfortunately, Obi-Wan isn't as civilized as he looks and fries poor Grievous. With that, Act 2 ends and we cut to the first scene of Act 3, where Mace sets off to arrest the Chancellor. If we cut out the bit where Anakin tells Mace that Palpatine's a Sith Lord, and just have Anakin tell Mace that he's sure Palpatine won't step down, the scene takes on a completely different meaning. Maybe Palpatine told Anakin to lure Mace to his office where an Order 66-style trap is waiting for him. Maybe Anakin is trying to warn Mace not to go, because he still wants to play both sides, and ironically, Mace's decision to act finally forces Anakin off the fence. At any rate, both of those options are way better than whatever this is. The final result of all of our narrative work is that Utapau is now structured like a classic Star Wars battle scene, or more accurately, a backwards version of the plane/chase scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Well, I reckon that wraps up our narrative redesign. Hope y'all enjoyed it, and I'll see y'all over at Part 2.